Revenge films.
My name is Jonathan Smith. I'm the CEO of a pharmaceutical company, and I'm currently 56 years old. About 2 years ago, my only son, Kevin, got his first job, and he moved out of the house. Ever since he left, I've been living together with just my wife, Karen. The good news followed because recently my son told us that he was going to be getting married. However, that also meant some bad news, because it meant that I was being cornered into making an important decision, and that was to get a divorce from my wife. My wife, Karen, used the reason that I had a good income to never work. For all of these years, she was a full-time housewife, and she supported our family and helped a lot in raising Kevin. On the surface, she was a kind wife who was thoughtful and caring of her family. However, behind the scenes, I knew her secret. My wife was cheating on me for over 10 years. Not only that, but she was having the affair with one of the employees at my very own company. When I first found out, I was devastated. The reason why I found out the reality of this situation was because I had been listening to their conversations from the very beginning 10 years ago. My wife and the man that she was cheating on me with, named Thomas, had actually rented their own apartment so that they would be able to meet together in private without me suspecting anything. However, unfortunately for them, by pure coincidence, living next door to that apartment that they rented was my close friend from high school named Connor. Even after Connor and I graduated from school, went to college, and became adults, we remained close friends. Connor lived alone, and so I would often go over to his apartment to hang out with him and catch up. 10 years ago, one day, out of the blue, I received a phone call from Connor in the middle of the workday. He said there was an emergency, and he asked me to come to his place immediately. I ran straight there, and when I arrived, Connor came out of his apartment and looked panicked. As soon as he saw me, he grabbed me, shoved me into his apartment, and quickly closed the front door. And then he said, "Hey, Jonathan, today a man and a woman moved in next door, but you have to believe me, the woman looks identical to your wife, Karen." I was shocked and thought that surely that would never be the case. However, when we opened the window, the voice we could hear across the balconies was exactly the voice of my wife. And so, I made the decision to confirm by face as well. I waited around for a while, and then I heard the two of them coming out of the apartment next door. So, without them being able to see me, I looked through the peephole of the front door. And without a doubt, the woman was my wife. And then, when I saw the man's face, I was even more shocked. That's because the man that she was with was one of my staff from my own company. When I realized that the two of them were the type of people who were going behind my back so that they could meet in private, I was so devastated that I was at a loss for words. In reality, it was such a painful betrayal that I should have been able to divorce her immediately. However, the issue was our son. At the time, Kevin was still in middle school, and that's why I thought twice. He was going to be studying for the upcoming high school entrance exams, and then he was hopefully going to go into college. And I didn't want the divorce of his parents to become a disadvantage for him or to weigh on his progress in any way. For the sake of my son, I thought it wouldn't be too late for me to get a divorce until after my son moved out of our house and became independent. And so, in order to collect enough definitive evidence, I decided to let my wife swim. Whenever the two of them were in the apartment next door to Connor's apartment, he would call me and I would go over there. And I did everything I could to expose their relationship. I'm sure the two of them never could have imagined that I was standing right there in the apartment next door, and during the daytime they would be speaking boldly with the windows wide open. The two of them would say things like, "I love you," and other things that made my ears freeze. From the bottom of my heart, I was shocked. But thanks to that, I was able to understand that the two of them were also in a romantic relationship. But the man, Thomas, was actually quite well known in the company as being a playboy. So I figured that their relationship wasn't going to last for long anyway, and I tried not to think too deeply about it. However, it turned out that I was wrong. To my disbelief, 10 years later to this day, their relationship has continued. But now that my son Kevin had gotten a job, moved out, and was going to be getting married, I started to think it was time for me to officially prepare for the divorce. However, just ahead of that, the most unpredictable incident happened, and that was that I discovered that the man that my wife was cheating on me with had embezzled company money. Not only was Thomas going to get fired from his job, there was no doubt that he was going to be arrested by the police and charged for the embezzlement. As the CEO, there was no way I was going to allow an employee to embezzle company money, nor was I going to forgive him for it. So I showed no mercy and went straight to the police. For 10 years, they had continued an affair behind my back, and my wife and Thomas were betraying me for all of this time. And it seemed like the time had finally come for me to get the biggest revenge on the two of them. One day, without knowing anything, my wife came up to me saying that she wanted to go on a vacation together.
Well, Jonathan, now that Kevin moved out and is getting married, we're done raising a child now. Why don't the two of us go on a vacation, maybe overseas?
When my wife happily suggested this, I didn't change my expression at all and nonchalantly replied, "Don't you really want to go on a vacation with the man that you've been cheating on me with for the last 10 years? When I said that, my wife said,
"What?"
And her jaw dropped to the floor as she froze. And then I told her everything. I told her that I knew about her cheating on me for all of these years, that I hadn't said anything to her, and then I explained to her all of the reasons why. And then on top of all of that, I showed her all of the evidence that I had gathered over the last 10 years, and my wife turned completely pale. When I told her that the apartment that she had signed a contract for behind my back just so happened to be next door to the apartment that Connor was living in, my wife buried her face in her hands, knowing there was nowhere she could run to. At the very end, I handed the divorce papers to Karen, and I informed her that I would be collecting a settlement fee from her for the affair. But it seems that my wife had always wanted to be with Thomas all along, so her response was,
All right, fine. Thomas and I will both pay the settlement fee for the affair. But you know what? Finally, after all these years, I can finally be together with my true love.
And she had a smile come across her face like she was relieved. But that's when I informed her, "Oh yeah, about Thomas. He's probably gonna get arrested by tomorrow at the latest. He's been fired from the company as of today." When I said that, my wife started to panic.
What? Arrested? Fired from the company? What do you mean?
Karen was clearly flustered, so I told her about the case of embezzlement and that I also had evidence of that as well. In an instant, my wife broke down, sobbing, and with tears streaming on her face, she said,
Please tell me you're joking.
And as if to hammer the last nail into the coffin, I hit her with the last truth that I knew. And that apartment that you rented, you were paying for it, weren't you? Which must mean that you were paying for that apartment out of my income, isn't that right? So I'm gonna make sure that you pay all of that back to me. You were paying $800 a month for 10 years, so it's going to be just under $100,000. When I informed her of this, my wife panicked even more.
$10,000? That much? That's ridiculous. If you combine that with the settlement fee, that's going to be so much money. There's no way I'm going to be able to pay that.
After she said that, she then quieted down and said that she wanted me to hold off on the divorce for now, But of course I had no intention of that whatsoever, so I handed her the divorce papers that I had already signed, and I kicked her out of the house and I locked the front door. Luckily for my wife, she already had a place to go in that secret apartment she had with Thomas, so she was able to go and take refuge there for a short period, but now that we were getting a divorce, she was no longer able to pay the rent on the apartment, and I heard that she was kicked out of there in a short amount of time. And just as I had expected, Thomas was in fact arrested and placed in prison. When she found that out, conveniently for her, she came to my place and tried to apologize to me again. And then she said,
Even if Kevin is an adult already, I'm sure our son would be really sad if his parents got a divorce, so please, for him, rethink it.
She tried to use this excuse, but I told her that I had already informed Kevin that we were going to be getting a divorce, and that the reason behind it was because my wife had been cheating on me for 10 years. And throughout the 10 years that she was having an affair, because Karen thought that I didn't have a clue, she was boldly staying out overnight and even going on vacations for long periods of time. Because of that, apparently my son also found it suspicious that she was going on these trips without me. That's why when I told him that we were going to be getting a divorce, his only reaction was, "I'm amazed that you were able to hold it in for so long. It must have been hard for all of these years." And that was it. When I told my ex-wife this, she seemed to be pretty shocked about it, and then she started to cry.
Well, then what's going to happen to me now? Where am I supposed to go? Am I supposed to live alone?
So I replied, "When that guy gets out of prison, then why don't you guys be together? That's what you wanted, isn't it? You can both work together, and you're gonna have to help him return all of the money that he embezzled from my company." When I said that, she was no longer able to say anything. After that, my son told me that he cut off all ties with his mother. And then, when the divorce officially went through, my wife was going to have to pay the settlement fee as well as the rent that she had taken from me, and she had to go out to work. But she had nowhere to live, and as a result of finding a job with a dorm, she ended up having to do manual labor in the middle of nowhere. However, no matter how much she worked, she was so cornered by the payment that she wasn't able to live. And in order to earn more money, my ex-wife ended up selling her body to do so. As a result of that, she became further and further from a decent life and drowned herself in alcohol and lost herself. It seems that the punishment for continuing an affair for 10 years was quite big. As for Thomas, after he was released from prison, he had to pay back the money that he embezzled, and he worked from morning until night every single day. But since the money that he stole was over $200,000, he was left having to spend the rest of his life to pay it back. I heard he contacted my ex-wife after he was released, but by that time she was an alcoholic and she wasn't even able to have a normal conversation, so the two of them were never able to reunite. As for me, Kevin gave birth to his first child and I now had a grandchild. We built a two-family connected home and I live with them there. My grandchild is so cute I could stare at her forever. And when I started living with them, I was able to feel a happiness that I had never felt before. In order to spend even a little bit more time with my precious family, I even started going to a gym recently, and I'm putting more effort into my health and fitness. After being freed of the baggage I carried for many years, putting an end to my relationship with my wife was the right thing for me to do. Of course, my ex-wife doesn't know that we have a grandchild, and our family will probably never get involved with her ever again. But for her to live such a sad, lonely life, she did this all to herself. And now that she's alone, she will finally regret what she did. And I can only hope that she'll be able to change from the bottom of her heart.
How was today's video? If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Stay tuned for more.